Ofosu Jones-Quartey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dan. Good to be back with you, Hot Sauce.
I should have said welcome back to the show. Can you remind everybody why you're calling me Hot Sauce?
The last time I was on, Cara and I were talking, and then and Sam, one of the folks you work with, we were just talking about like what I think we were testing the mic, like what did I have for breakfast? And I had like eggs with hot sauce. And then I don't know, then it just went into this direction of hot sauce. Then you popped on the screen and I was like, you know what? I really think an amazing nickname for you, Dan, would be Hot Sauce. It's remained in my heart and it's resurfaced today.
I hope it's not giving you heartburn, as hot sauce can do.
Oh, no, not at all. It's very heartwarming.
My wife would resist my being dubbed hot sauce, given that she's always protecting the size of my ego.
Well, I'm gonna hype you up every time. So,
all right, I appreciate that
for sure.
I like being gassed up. So the last time you were on the show, actually, the first time you were on this show. The guy who was producing the episode, DJ Kashmir, asked you, what do you want to talk about? And you said self-compassion. And then this time, the woman who's producing the show is Eleanor, asked you, what do you want to talk about? And you said, still self-compassion, but also open awareness meditation.
Yes.
So we will definitely talk about self-compassion because I think it's the type of thing that is actually inexhaustibly interesting and useful.
Totally agree.
But let's start with open awareness meditation because I actually don't think we've talked about it that much on this show, and it is a core practice for me too.
Nice.
So maybe let's start with a description of what it is, and then we'll get into why it's so important to you.
Open, and shout out to Eleanor. I had a great time just going back and forth and figuring out the best way to have this chat. So
look, I don't want Eleanor to get a big ego either. So you know,
I'm down to hype up the whole squad. Shout out to the whole unit that works with Dan. Open awareness has been described in a pithy way as like the meditation of no meditation or choiceless awareness. What it is for me is bringing the meditative quality that we bring to the present moment, but not tying ourselves to an anchor. So in, I would say, more traditional mindfulness or vipassana practices or techniques, a lot of the guidance is to pick an anchor, whether it's the breath or sensations in the body or the coming and going of sounds. And to have that be your home base, if it's more of a mindfulness practice, then there's an accommodation that the mind will wander, but we come back again and again to our same home base, the breath, the body, sounds, or maybe if it's loving kindness, a quality of the heart. With open awareness practice, we are not choosing an anchor, but really allowing the flow of experience, thoughts, sensations, emotions, sounds, everything to be a part of what we are aware of. We're not choosing. It is exactly kind of like what it sounds like. If we think about taking a picture with concentration practices, I think open awareness can be a concentration practice, but with certain concentration practices, it's almost as if we are focusing the lens and making the scope a lot more narrow. Open awareness is like taking a wide angle photo or having a long lens, or even using soft focus, where you're just not picking one particular thing. So yeah, that's my my little answer there.
This is a question I've had from people before. How do you define a concentration practice? What does that mean? And how is that different from an open awareness practice, which, as you said, can be a concentration practice, but sometimes really isn't?
I think that when it comes to these techniques, we do end up getting in a bit of a semantics game, because I feel that we can arrive at the same place and we're just kind of going through different doorways. So in my experience with traditional concentration practices, there's even less space allotted to the mind to wander off. It's like we pick an anchor, usually the breath. Well, I'm going to say usually for me, because I was initially trained in the Burmese Vipassana system that was developed by Mahasi Sayadaw and Sayadaw U Pandita. My teacher, Bhante Buddha Rakita, taught me this method of just watching the rise and settling of the breath at the abdomen. So when we're just doing sort of a lighter mindfulness practice, yes, the mind will wander. We come back to the breath. When it's a deeper concentration practice, we really, really try to stay with the object of our attention, in my case, the breath. And when we notice the mind drifting, we gently but swiftly bring it back. And the goal is to stay with the object until there's really a quality of non-distraction. There's nothing else but your attention and the object of attention, even to the point where the two begin to feel as though they're inseparable. The mind becomes very quiet, very still. Yeah, and it's a cool place to hang out for some time. With open awareness, that quality of stillness is still available, but we don't, or I should say, I don't pick one thing to sort of drill down into. I just allow the flow to be the flow until there's really no resistance to the flow, and there's and I can feel the quality of stillness in my awareness that is different than the flow of sensations, thoughts, sounds, etc. And then that quality of stillness, I can rest in that more and more. So it feels like we get to the same place with a deep concentration practice and an open awareness practice, but just vastly different approaches.
Let me see if I can just restate some of this, because I think for many people, first of all, the word concentration can be off-putting, because we think of being told to pay attention and grit our teeth and furrow our brow in class or something like that. But concentration, another word for it is like one-pointedness, and it can come with a lot of feeling of tranquility, where you get focused on your breath or loving kindness phrases, and the mind really settles down. I do want to make clear to anybody who's listening to this and thinking, my mind never fucking settles down, that's okay too. There's an enormous amount of benefit to be had from just trying to focus on one thing for a nanosecond or two. And then every time your mind wanders, you start again. And in the moment of waking up from distraction, you're learning something incredibly important, which is you're getting a sense of how wild the mind is. And that familiarity, otherwise known as mindfulness, allows you not to be yanked around by all of your thoughts and urges and emotions. And so concentration practices are different from like an open awareness or choiceless awareness, where there is no anchor. We're not focusing on the breath. We're not focusing on loving kindness practices. We're just trying to be mindful of whatever comes up.
Yeah.
How's that for a summary?
I think that's a great summary. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I really don't like the word radical. I think I've said that every time I've been on your show. I find that it creeps in when I'm trying to explain something. So what's another word? I think it's maybe special or interesting. Anyway, it's an approach to life that is very different than how we normally approach life, which is, again, let me use I statements. It's different than how I normally approach life, which I kind of automatically am judging or bracing or anticipating or fixating or just having some sort of mental relationship with whatever I'm experiencing. In my open awareness practice, I'm working on allowing whatever it is to be what it is without clinging to it or rejecting it or ruminating about it. Just giving reality the gift of freedom and giving myself the gift of freedom as well. It's like taking a break from the constant getting yanked around. And so it might be a good time to segue into why I chose this, why I've been sticking with this practice, because I have OCD. And choosing one particular object of meditation was just absolute hell. And I was not having a good time in my practice. And I stuck with it for so long but there was so much anxiety around having a bad thought while trying to stick with a particular meditation object, feeling like a bad meditator when I couldn't stay with the object, or, the compulsion to think the worst possible thought when you're trying to do the best possible thing, which is a symptom of this condition. Oh, it just made my meditation practice really horrific. Before I knew that this was a valid way of practicing, I still just wanted to have a practice. So I would just sit. I used to say, I just sit and watch things change. And then I was practicing with Dawn Scott and Celeste Young. And one day on the retreat, they offered an open awareness practice. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. Oh, this is okay. Amazing. And it just made me feel a little bit more confident in the approach that I was kind of intuitively finding for myself.
I do want to hear more about your personal story and why this practice appeals to you. And you describe it as a kind of helpful lowering of the bar.
Yes.
But before we get to that, just from the perspective of a beginning or intermediate meditator, I can imagine people thinking, I have a hard enough time being with the breath or staying focused on loving kindness phrases or something basic.
Yeah.
And you're saying, no, just sit there and be aware of whatever's happening. Well, that's just going to be distraction fest, to the max.
Yeah. What's beautiful about this point in history for us practitioners at whatever level is that we do have quite a banquet of options at our disposal that we can practice with that will suit our mental disposition. So I wouldn't say that open awareness is one size fits all, but I would recommend that folks take some time to perhaps experiment with it and see if it's something they can add to their meditation toolkit, so to speak. For me, it's become my go-to. And in the Soto Zen tradition, which I've been practicing in for about a year and some change now, the practice of shikantaza, just sitting, is essentially parallel to an open awareness practice where we're not choosing anything, just letting the flow of life happen. There's actually a real freedom in not choosing, because in my experience, we don't really have that much choice in the first place. Internally, externally, so much is happening that's out of our control, that when you have an open awareness practice allows us to sort of make peace with the vastness of our everyday experience. And it helps me widen my capacity to be with, if I have a deadline and my kid has a particular need and there's a fire truck happening in the background and my OCD is acting up, and I don't have control over the timing of those things. They are happening. So what's my response? Maybe it is to take a breath and be with one thing that can help anchor me through it. Or it is to have a kind of inner spaciousness that I've been cultivating through this practice that reminds me that all of this is coming and going. It's all coming and going. I don't have to get too hung up on any of it. I can just kind of give myself and the whole situation more space.
I relate to that, this sense of not being at war with reality, which can be really peaceful. I do want to just keep pressing you on this, how to do it, even if you aren't, a super experienced meditator. So I'll just say a little bit about how I do open awareness practice as somebody who doesn't have an extraordinary degree of concentration. In other words, as somebody who is fidgety and distractible. One thing I do that's really helpful is I start my meditation session with a concentration practice, like a body scan where you're moving from the top of the head down to the forehead, the eye sockets, jaws, neck, throat, et cetera, all the way down to the feet, and then maybe sweeping through one, two, three times. in a very slow, systematic way that does focus the mind. Loving kindness practice really focuses the mind, not so to the point where there's no distraction, but fewer distractions. And then I can open up into a choiceless awareness. And then once I'm in that choiceless awareness, I actually use thought to help me stay in the game via something called mental noting, which I know you're familiar with, where instead of just sitting here and seeing if I can just stay in the present moment in an unbroken way, I use just a little, as Joseph Goldstein says, little whisper in the mind. Oh, yeah. Hearing,
Mm-hmm.
thinking, seeing, tingling, unpleasant, pleasant. And so I say all of that to see what your reaction is as a teacher and what else you would recommend.
Sure. So that is beautiful. And following that formula, I think can get anybody into the flavor and practice of open awareness. I love that you begin with an anchoring or concentration practice. For me, because the breath has been like the number one thing for me for 20 years now, it's just my default. I do begin by just noticing my breathing at the abdomen. But it's held very lightly. And I think that holding it lightly has also been helpful for me because I used to hold everything very tightly. It's like I really have to, drill down, concentrate. I think that word concentration, as you mentioned earlier, didn't denote or connote any sense of tranquility for me. It really was about like forcing the mind to stay in one place. So I really try to hold any so-called concentration practice lightly, but I do allow the breath normally to be my entryway. And after being with the breath for a little bit, generally just dropping into a more choiceless place. I've tried to experiment. There's a teacher, Ashin U Tejaniya, who suggested in one of his books, I think it's called Don't Look Down at the Defilements, They'll Laugh at You, that noting is great, and that we can also practice with just being aware. So almost like a silent noting, if that makes any sense. So I've been trying to experiment with both. The noting practice is very, very helpful. It allows me to stay in the moment and just say, okay, yes, like you said, that little whisper, hearing, feeling, breath, pleasant, unpleasant, and no judgment around any of it.
Actually, you can make a note of judgment.
Right. Yeah. It's very true. Then sometimes I'll just try to see if I can even make some space in between the noting and just really just feel and notice what's there. But I love the approach that you mentioned, going through the body maybe a few times to really get grounded and to really let the mind settle before we open up the window.
The show is brought to you by Function Health. It's the only health platform that gives you access to the kind of health data that most people never see and the insights to actually take action. Inside of Function, you can test over 160 biomarkers from heart and hormones to toxins, inflammation, and stress. And then you can track the test results in one secure place over time. It's an enhanced view of what's happening in your body. I recently did a couple of blood tests for Function, and the results are starting to come in on my Function portal. They're not all in, and so I don't have the full summary from the Function physician who will analyze the results. But watching them come in and talking about the results with my wife, who is a physician, is super interesting. Learn some new stuff that I want to talk about with my doctor. They told me that my biological age is 7.5 years younger than my actual age, so that's cool. I'll keep you posted as we continue to talk about Function here on the show. This is good for people of all genders. One of the things that Function is interested in getting people to understand is whether fasting is messing with your hormones. Women's bodies are biologically wired for reproductive protection, and their endocrine systems are closely connected to energy availability. In other words, women deal with monthly hormonal fluctuations and have higher sensitivity to caloric restriction and stress. When the body senses nutrient scarcity, it can trigger a cascade of hormonal shifts. So if you're thinking about fasting, consider testing your levels to help make sure your hormones are in check and your metabolism is strong before creating your plan. Learn more and join using my link. The first 1,000 get a $100 credit toward their membership. Visit www.functionhealth.com/happier or use the gift code happier100 at sign up to own your health. That's functionhealth.com/happier, gift code happier100. Just to say a little bit about Sayadaw U Tejaniya, who you referenced. He is a Burmese master. I've never met him or interviewed him, but he has many students who teach in the West. One of them is Alexis Santos, who's been on this show a bunch of times. I'll drop some links to Alexis's prior appearances on this show in the show notes. I actually just spent the weekend with Alexis.
Oh, amazing.
Sayadaw U Tejaniya's teachings via Alexis have been massively helpful to me. And he has this sequence of 3 phrases he asks his students to drop into the mind. The first is, are you aware, or am I aware? And that just kind of reminds you to wake up. Of course, the mind will disappear, the present moment awareness will disappear, or the mind will wander off, and then you can come back gently. Am I aware? The second phrase is, and I love this, what's the attitude in the mind right now? Which is just a way to kind of turn the lights on for subterranean defilements. You use that phrase.
Yeah.
Defilements are, in Buddhism, the 3 poisons or defilements are greed, hatred, and delusion. Wanting, not wanting, or not being aware at all. And when you ask, what's the attitude in the mind right now, it can reveal, it's like turning on a black light in a hotel room.
Yikes.
And you see all sorts of disgusting shit on the sheets. You can reveal, oh, I'm sitting here wanting to be concentrated, or I'm wanting this meditation to be over, or whatever. And so just asking that question, reveals that desire is in sexual congress with your leg, like a untrained dog or whatever. and that's really helpful. And then the third phrase is not a question, it's just a phrase. This is nature, which is a reminder that all these things you're seeing in your mind, including your distraction, including your moments of radiant clarity, it's not personal. It's inextricably any seemingly idiosyncratic and bespoke little thought you're having is, of course, just another little expression of the universe.
Exactly. And to me, a practice that lends itself to openness reveals just that this is really just nature. In my practice, I see so much of my automatic responses that are so fast that I at least don't have the presence of mind to prevent them from arising, whether it's, judgment or aversion or distraction or bliss. They arise, they hang out for a moment, and they go on their way. The insight that can come from an open awareness practice is seeing how deeply this pattern is true for literally everything, for your thoughts, for your sensations, for the dog that's passing by your window right now, for the emotion that you're feeling, for the question your kid is asking you, or whatever it might be. It's all coming and going. It's all coming and going. It's all coming and going. And that the way that we brace, or the way that we grab for and against, or the way that we try to be aloof towards reality, begins to soften a little bit because we are just so intimately aware of the experience of impermanence, vast impermanence, and that this is nature, exactly as you said, as Sayadaw U Tejaniya suggests. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. There are three poisons or three defilements in the classical Buddhist language: greed, hatred, and delusion. There are also these three marks of existence in the classical Buddhist parlance, meaning there are these three non-negotiable aspects of reality that you can see quite clearly in a practice like this. One is impermanence. Everything changes all the time. You were referencing that. And that can be terrifying, but also liberating because all of the stuff that's dogging you is just coming and going. The second is suffering, which is sounds a little bit more dire or dour than it is. It's just that if you're clinging to things in a universe characterized by impermanence,
Right.
you're going to suffer.
Yep.
And so you can see how a pleasant state arises and you're clinging to it and it goes away and you suffer. And so you can watch that in an open awareness meditation, or really, honestly, almost any kind of meditation. You're watching the mind, you can see this. And the third, which is directly pointed at through the phrase, "this is nature," is what is often called not self or emptiness, which essentially just means there's nothing in your mind that you can claim as yours. It feels like it's yours, but as you examine it, you realize that claiming it as yours is, in the words of one great monk, a misappropriation of public property. There is this all just nature. It's all just the universe playing itself out. And that sounds trippy or weird, but it's actually really comforting that once you see your emotions as passing meteorological phenomena, then you can work with them and not be so caught up in them.
Things stop being so life or death. And the feeling that the way life is somehow a personal attack or affront on me or you, that begins to dissipate. The 5 remembrances that the Buddha talks about, that we are all of the nature to be impermanent, the nature to grow old, the nature to experience illness, the nature to die, and the inheritors of our actions. Even all pieces of that or all of that can be seen in an open practice, and it's not about taking anything on or believing anything, but kind of making peace with how things are. That peacefulness is something that we can carry into our relationships. I'll for instance, like yesterday, I was feeling really good, and which is not always the case. And I found myself like starting to worry, like, oh man, how long is this good feeling going to last? And resting back in the openness that I've been working to make a relationship with, I kind of was able to say, it's here right now, and that's enough. And I really have no idea what's gonna happen next. And then giving myself that space of like, I don't have to cling to this good feeling. I don't know what's gonna happen next, but I know it'll change. I feel like it gave my sense of well-being a little bit longer, like lifespan, because I wasn't trying to hold on to it or push it away or worry about it, just like kind of letting it be and letting the mystery of life just be a mystery, Yeah.
In my experience, being mindful of something,
Mm-hmm.
being mindfully aware, meaning I'm seeing it clearly, I'm not trying to cling to it, I'm not trying to push it away. I have a sense of warm curiosity about it. There's no suffering in those moments. You can be mindfully aware of something deeply unpleasant. I'm not saying I can always do it. If I'm in a panic attack, it's very hard for me to muster mindfulness. But when I'm mindful, or actually one of the things I often say to myself when I'm on retreat is, if I'm suffering in any way, it just means there's something I'm not being mindful of. To me, that's one of the benefits and beauties of open awareness practices, that every time you wake up and start being mindful again, it's like the suffering goes away.
Yeah. You realize that the edges that you have are imaginary. The resistance that you have, you can go right up to the edge of that resistance and just rest there. And then in my experience, it fades. And my capacity to be with reality as it is, not how I want it to be, not how it just was, but just as it is, it opens. The horizon extends. It's not this kind of like super blissful experience. It really just feels more open and more peaceful. I think a part of maybe how greed, hatred, and delusion manifest in our experience is in trying to forecast how things are going to be or plan. And obviously this is built into our evolution, all of that. But life really is, when you think of like impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, non-self, I mean, to me, that says that life is a fucking mystery.
Yes.
And how, to the extent that we can be at peace with the mystery, is the extent that we are going to have a better time in it. And I feel like this practice gives us an opportunity to witness the mystery unfold in real time and to learn how to make peace with it.
I believe the word that Buddhists use to describe what you are describing, or to capture what you're describing, is equanimity. It's like, can you have a generalized okayness with whatever's happening?
Yeah. And I think there's a misinterpretation that we have to be even keeled in an otherwise topsy-turvy world. And I don't think that's what equanimity is.
Yes,
asking us. It is to allow our peace to match the dynamism of life. It's like, okay, well, this is really great. Okay, it can be great. I just know that greatness isn't forever, so I can embrace the greatness for as long as it is. I've been reading Everyday Zen by Charlotte Joko Beck, and she's been talking about two ways that we can suffer, either like skillfully or unskillfully. And in the skillful model, we actually just embrace and become fully aware and fully enmeshed with the experience of suffering, so that there's an intimate relationship with it. And then it passes, then it changes. And we haven't made anybody else suffer more because of it. We haven't infiltrated it with our own ideas. We just say, okay, this sucks and I'm with it. And then it changes. And then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. It always changes. Unpleasant experiences are just a part of the game, but we can make them so much more unpleasant when we start adding all of our stuff.
So let me see if I can tie a bow around at least this part of the conversation. Open awareness practice or choiceless awareness practice is where you sit and just try to be as mindful as you can with whatever's happening. Of course, you're going to get distracted. And that's cool. You can just, when you wake up, start again. And if you wake up with a big blast of self-directed judgment, you can just make a little mental note of judgment.
Right.
And speaking of notes, like that's a little mental noting is a way to keep yourself in the game. You could also start with what are often referred to as classical concentration practices, like loving kindness or focusing on the breath, and then open up to open awareness. And the use case here is, if you've got a solid meditation practice, this is one way to diversify it.
Yes.
Or if, like Ofosu, you find that you've been actually really struggling with trying to grit your teeth, bear down, and do breath-based or loving kindness meditation because it's quite restrictive on the mind. Well, then this is an option that might be a useful lowering of the bar.
Exactly. I love Buddhism. I love the practice of meditation. I so wanted to continue my practice, but my practice was so uncomfortable. When I say my practice was hell, I really do mean it. Like sitting and just the entire session, I would still learn. I'd learn a lot, but I would just have the worst time. I didn't want to give up on my practice. And so for me, this approach was really a lifeline to staying in the game. It's made me love meditating. How I'll say that, because I walk past the cushion and be like, okay, here we go. It's time to go back into, the depths. But now it's like, it's time to just sit and be open and just have a relationship with the mystery. Something that I am kind of intuiting in this practice is that there actually isn't that much to do. This reflection that this is nature. In my approach to this practice, I'm coming to terms with that more and more, and just allowing nature to be nature instead of filling it with my own ideas and then chasing after those ideas, etc. So there's a sense that the Mahayana tradition talks about, that we are already perfect, and we're just not seeing it or relating to ourselves and the universe and reality in a skillful or in the proper way, so to speak. This approach to practice has made me realize that I don't have to put some massive goal of achieving deep states of concentration or becoming like a super heroic meditator. I can sit and just let everything be, and that's enough. And there's actually something miraculous and beautiful in bearing witness to all of that.
A couple of phrases that came to mind as you were talking. These are phrases that I've heard elsewhere, and I don't remember who I heard them from, but occasionally I will remember to say them to myself in open awareness practice. One is nothing to do, nowhere to go. It's already here. Meaning that your awareness is already here. The point of practice, it's already here. Often it's papered over by, planning a homicide or wondering about what's for lunch or whatever. But this ability to just be aware in a raw, bare way of whatever's happening in the mind, in the body, in the space around you, it's already here. There's nothing you have to go do.
Yes.
You just got to let go. And then the other phrase is, you don't have to chase the Dharma's chasing you.
I was so rabidly chasing the Dharma, and there's just no need to do that. I mean, it is what it is this very moment. And there's, as I've said, so much beauty, so much mystery, so much truth. Maybe beauty and mystery aren't always, available to our perception, but the truth, the raw truth, which can give way to beauty and mystery, is always right here. Yeah. That phrase, nowhere to go, nothing to do. This is it.
Going back to the beginning of the conversation, I was saying how when Eleanor, who's producing this episode, asked you what you wanted to talk about, you said self-compassion and open awareness. And to me, and you just tell me if you think I have got this right, there is a self-compassion in this lowering of the bar for meditation. It's baked right into this entire approach.
Absolutely. I think there's so much in the culture of meditation and mindfulness, both the ancient culture and the modern culture, that suggests that we have to be overachievers. It's another thing for us to become experts at, to become masters at, to get straight A's at, to get a PhD in, whether it is the stories great masters who have accomplished these incredible feats of mind and heart, or whether it's maintaining your streak on a meditation app. There's still this, I think, a pervasive, maybe misinterpretation of what we're actually up to here. And that, if I do 100 days, and which is great, please do 100, do 1,000 days. But the attitude that comes with it, I think, can end up being another stick that we end up whacking ourselves with, or another measuring tool that we feel that we're falling short. I hear it all the time. I don't do it enough, or I can't do it, or I just don't think that my mind is capable, or all that. And with a practice like this, it's like, no, just have a seat and let yourself be. We can just take a few breaths, or just notice how the body's feeling, notice what sounds are there, give yourself some space to settle. And then you actually don't have to do anything at all but be present for your life in this moment. So I'm navigating this neurodivergent mental health condition that I have, that not necessarily everybody else has, but I do note it. I have heard anecdotally that folks deal with this same thing that I'm about to mention. I set up my meditation session to last 15, 30 minutes, whatever. And then the goal is just to have the best 15, 30 minutes I could possibly have, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. Like, let's just carve out this perfect 30. And God forbid I have a negative thought, or in my case, I have a barrage of, really crazy, unpleasant, intrusive thoughts. And then, and what if you have a bad thought right before the bell? Oh, then the whole thing is just, it's a failure. In this practice, I've been seeing that, every moment is complete. Whether it was great, whether it sucked, it came and went. I don't have to judge my life by, did I accomplish a great slice of time, or was I the most optimal for this window of time? Every moment is complete. It's coming and going. So then the pressure lowers, and counterintuitively, the length of time I spend just feeling a little bit more chill, extends. So yeah, I do think that in lowering the bar, we do ourselves a great kindness, and there's a lot of wisdom that's available to us there when we're not pressing ourselves so hard.
Yeah, it's this strange paradox of meditation, which is, I often describe it as a fucked up video game where you can't move forward if you want to move forward. So it's something about like the necessity of surrender, or dropping your expectations. Or another thing I often say is meditation is where perfectionism comes to die. Or another little saying that's on the wall at the Insight Meditation Society, where you and I have both done retreats and you've taught retreats, that stop expecting, and then the whole practice will unfurl for you.
I think the whole of the Buddha's diagnosis and prescription for life is so counterintuitive. The fact that it appears so deeply counterintuitive to us, or to me, is evidence of the condition that many of us find ourselves in, the unenlightened condition. That we can't immediately see that what we habitually go to for happiness ends up disappointing us. That chasing after things, or harshly rejecting things, or just trying to pretend like something's not happening doesn't give us a joyful relationship with reality. I love that video game analogy. It's like, if you want to move forward, you have to stop.
And I know that can sound frustrating to people, but it just means, like, can you be okay with whatever's happening right now?
Yeah.
Instead of leaning into the next moment, or trying to achieve something, or expecting a certain outcome. The point is not to feel a certain way. It's to feel whatever you're feeling clearly, so that your feelings generally don't own you as much. I mean, simple but not easy.
Simple but not easy. Something that I'm noticing is how much I have believed that my thoughts and feelings are my only reality.
Yeah.
But as I engage with this practice more, the quality of awareness, which is, in my experience, peaceful, vast, stable, underlies the tumult of my joys and sorrows.
Yes.
And it's another quality that is a part of me, me in air quotes. So it's not just my thoughts and feelings, but I can actually have there's actually a deep source of peace and stability underneath all of it. And that quality of awareness comes to the fore, more and more in my life as I engage with this practice.
Again, I'm always trying to identify or get myself into the minds of anybody listening who might be struggling in some way to understand this. But yeah, we all know we have thoughts and that we have sensations. We hear stuff, we see stuff, we taste stuff. We all know we have emotions, but we're so caught up in all of the thoughts and urges and emotions and sensations that we rarely turn around to look at, like, what is knowing all of this?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a vast reservoir of equanimity and peace to be had in just realizing that there's something mysterious that is aware of the sound of my voice right now, of the whatever sensations are happening in your body right now, and just check that out. The Buddhists, as the Buddhists often say, the not finding, because you won't find anything.
Right.
The not finding is the finding. That's the point. So you have a new book, which I mentioned in the intro, Lyrical Dharma, which is a collection of your lyrics and your poetry interspersed with, commentary about your own life experiences, and which are quite rich, experiences and complex. I want to play a clip from one of your tunes, The Hundreds, and then get you to kind of unpack it on the other side. So, Eleanor, if you're there, can you play it for us?
Wrote 100 rounds like 100 times. Blew 100 lines like 100 times. Listen for the sniff, I ain't hard to find. Walking in the dark, I was colorblind. I lived 100 lives like 100 times. For every pot of gold, I found a way to undermine. Almost lost my wife like 100 times. What do you see in me? She told me love is blind. 100 hours of meditation like 100 times. I must have cried at least 100,000 times. Attempted suicide a couple times. Saved by the power when understanding and love combined. All the shit I did to numb my mind. So many bottles, vampires said my blood was wine. Or rather Tito's. Shout out to my amigos who tucked the 9 for coming in the clutch like 100 times. Call my therapist, discussion time. Turns out the pain that I was holding really wasn't mine. Still I had to heal from it for the 100th time. Underlying fear turned to thoughts and become the mind. From Noah's Ark to Napoleon Bonaparte, I was blown apart. A hero in disguise like I'm Joan of Arc. I know the feeling when it's cold and dark. Spiritual surgery, prefer me with an open heart.
Ofosu, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't call myself an expert in rap history, but I've listened to no small amount of hip hop in my life, dating back to when I was a young boy. And I don't think it's super common for rappers to be as open as you are. And I'd just be interested in, hearing you say more about, there are references there to attempting suicide and, numbing your mind. So if you're comfortable saying more about your life experiences in this regard, I'd be interested in hearing it.
I was proud of myself when I put that verse together, because I think it really captured a lot of what my life had been like up to that point. So it's about a year or so, a year, maybe 2 years old now. And, but I reference that song in the opening of the book because it is kind of like a thesis statement for, how things had been going for me, in my life, dealing with going for 20 plus years with a really difficult, undiagnosed mental health condition, thinking that it meant that I was a bad meditator, that I was a bad person, having terrible intrusive thoughts, terrible anxiety, and being confused about what all of that meant, and having a lot of self-hatred around that, and trying to meditate my way out of it only, and not seeking some additional help for it. Well, seeking additional help from unreliable sources like, drug dealers and liquor stores,
Mm-hmm.
and the implications that had on my relationships, in deteriorating my mental health. I fell into being a Dharma teacher really by accident. But it's been many years now that I've occasionally held the teacher's seat. I wanted my lives to not be so separate. My music life, my practice life, my artist life, my teaching life. So I've been working on just making everything a part of the flow of one expression. And as a teacher, I don't want to sit in front of people and pretend that I am, some super realized person, or that my life is this super clean story. I'd rather speak from a place of someone who's suffered quite deeply, in ways that were out of my control, and in ways that, I exacerbated through my own actions. If my practice and my art are going to be the same, then I have to do the same in my art, and speak from what's real. Hip hop tends to speak to a lot of pain. And I think more and more people are speaking to the pain that they personally experience. But I think hip hop also, the type of hip hop that is championed or that is mainstream, is usually talking about the ways in which people are trying to hide from their pain through sex, through drugs, through materialism, through violence. And I'm interested in what's the root, what's the root of our suffering? And can we talk about that so that we can become more liberated from it? So sometimes you mentioned on a TikTok that your mom was like, hey, why do you have to mention, this unpleasant part of your own history? Wouldn't you want to keep that private? And you said that, you can't make connections with people if you're hiding, parts of yourself. People will make a connection with you if you can be real with them. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, that actually gave me a lot of confidence while I was writing this book, because there were some chapters I was like, oh my God, my mother is going to read this, and my kids are going to read this eventually. And like, oh, should I do this? Should I say this? But I'm like, man, there are so many people who could either relate, or who I know for a fact, have had similar experiences, that perhaps this could be helpful. And for me, it's my way of saying that these stories don't have control over me anymore. They are now the mud from which a lotus is beginning to arise, So yeah, so I'll pause there.
Well, I think it's awesome you're doing it. I think your kids will thank you for it eventually.
Thank you.
There's a line in here that might be worth dwelling on, just because it definitely rhymes with what we were talking about earlier about not self or impersonality. Call my therapist, discussion time. Turns out the pain I was holding really wasn't mine.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, yeah, and that was a line I was like, oh man, you wrote something cool. I was talking with a monk named Brother Phap Lin at Plum Village Monastery when I was there about a year ago. And I had asked him, well, do people who have mental health conditions or mental illness or neurodiversity, can they achieve enlightenment? And I loved his answer. He said, I don't know, which is always a great answer. He said, I don't know, but I think, the question you're asking is too small. He said, I think you have to go big or go home. Consider the type of suffering that you're experiencing, and consider all the beings who have experienced a similar type of suffering from the beginning of time, or at least the beginning of humanity up until now. Now consider all of the people who are dealing with that type of suffering around the world right now. And now consider everyone who might experience or who definitely will experience some form of this type of suffering in the future. He said, how does that make you feel? And I said, well, it makes this experience that I'm having feel less personal.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, yeah, the suffering sort of moves through each of us in this it's kind of like a wave that moves through the human condition that we each can do something about, but we don't own it. We didn't curse ourselves. It's not ours. It's not personal. It's a part of the relationship that we have with reality. It's also deeply a part of our conditioning, who our parents were, who their parents were, where we grew up, what gender we were born in, what gender we identify with, what our skin color, all these different factors. None of it really belongs to us. And so if we can depersonalize our experience of suffering, we can start to be liberated from it. So the line says, call my therapist, discussion time. Turns out the pain that I was holding really wasn't mine. Still, I had to heal from it for the 100th time, because underlying fears turn to thoughts and become the mind. So even though it's impersonal, we still have a responsibility to take care of ourselves and make even a small pivot towards something more liberated, if we can.
There's a quote you use that really lands for me. I don't know who said it. You'll tell me. If we don't transform pain, we will transmit it.
Yes.
We will transmit it.
And the name of this teacher escapes me also. Maybe I'll find it and we can maybe put it in the show notes if it feels good to do that. But I know I referenced it in the book. It's just one of those things. It's like, no, the trauma you experienced was not your fault, but it is your responsibility to do your best not to re-traumatize yourself or other people around you, especially if you can remember how much it sucked to experience that trauma. Do your best to not wreak havoc, on others. And it's so hard to do that no matter what, whether you have a practice or not. But if you don't have a practice that puts you in touch with the felt sense of your own experience, it's hard not to transmit your trauma to somebody else. Yeah.
It's that quote is often attributed to Richard Rohr.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a cousin of the cliche that hurt people hurt people.
Hurt people, yeah. I know from my own experience that I've been the hurt person hurting others, and I've been on the receiving end of a hurt person's hurtful actions. I can see in the arc of my life, Frank Ocean, the artist, the singer Frank Ocean, had written a letter to himself 5 years, to his 5 years younger self. And he was writing about all the experiences that he had just been through over the last 5 years, but telling his younger self not to give up, because he's on a plane right now to, go into the studio with some major artists, and everything is going to work out. I was talking with a nun, a Tibetan nun, at the hospital for sick children in Canada, and she was talking about, you don't really know how much you've changed until you look back at the last 5 years. Like, we might be judging ourselves like, okay, I'm not as good as I was yesterday or last month. But like, if you really want to see if your life is bending towards something, just think about where you were 5 years ago. So thinking about where I was 5 years ago, wow, very different trajectory. And even 10 years ago, et cetera. So I do feel like my practice is bending the arc of my life in a direction that feels healthy and that feels good and more healed. But it takes time. So I'm just trying to write about that, and just I don't think I could write about it if I wasn't in a better place. And so that's another part of the celebration of this book and the accompanying album coming into the world.
You're pointing at something I think that will resonate with a lot of people, which is the aforementioned Joseph Goldstein often refers to them as the practice self-assessment tapes that we run in our mind. Like, how am I doing? Am I good? Am I doing this right? How am I doing it better than I was doing 6 months ago? Is any of this making any fucking difference? Et cetera, et cetera. When actually you want to take the long view, the Dalai Lama has talked about this too. Are you losing your temper? Did you used to lose your temper 10 times a day? And is it now 3 or even 7? That's improvement. And it's meaningful improvement. It's not nothing.
It's not nothing. Yes, that incremental self-assessment tape, I think it's a part of it. It shouldn't make us suffer. I think the incremental self-assessment tape can be repackaged or reapproached as a simple mindfulness practice. Like, what's going on? How's my state of mind right now?
Mm-hmm.
How are my actions right now? And then, like, say you make a mistake, say you do get angry, or you do have an outburst, or you do have a relapse, or you do have, whatever. Say you stumble really hard. How many times have you stumbled in the last 5 years? Are you one perpetual stumble, or is this kind of more of an anomaly? Is this the exception and no longer the rule? And I'm finding that for me, more and more, certain things that just even my relationship with my kids, stuff that I didn't have patience for. I've got a little bit more patience, and that little bit more patience makes a big deal. It's those small victories and taking the long view can be another, important self-compassion practice.
Yes. Do you think your improvements are from your practice alone, or from your practice plus having finally been diagnosed with OCD and getting treated for it?
I think that it's all practice. What I used to have a much more narrow view of practice, which was like, practice means meditation and reading Dharma books and having Dharma conversations and doing walking meditation and, going on retreat. That's practice. But, practice is really taking care of your life, being aware. In my children's book, I say that mindfulness is a way to be aware and to care. And it's knowing what's happening in your life and then doing having a skillful response to it. So knowing that I was suffering deeply, the skillful, compassionate response, which is born out of practice, is to get some extra help. So I think that having expanded my view of what practice is made it okay for me to get additional mental health support. And all of that has made my life a lot more manageable. Yeah, I'm feeling happier. Definitely. I'm definitely feeling better. And there is like trepidation. Like, am I allowed to say that? I think it's much cooler to be like, I'm fucking suffering. and B, I don't want to invite disaster, by saying but I have no idea what the future is going to hold. In this moment, I'm feeling grateful for being alive and for having a practice. And that's enough.
I love to hear it. 2 questions I ask at the end of interviews. One is there something you were hoping we would get to that we didn't?
This was such a great conversation. Only that, I guess one thing that I'd like to let folks know is that my book, Lyrical Dharma, is out. And I also released an album right next to the book. It's called Komorebi. And I am very proud of that album. And there are songs from that album that are in the book. So you can, and songs from my previous 2 albums that are in the book. So if you go to bornimusic.com/lyrical dharma, all of the songs that are in the book, in the order that they appear in the book, will be in that playlist. So enjoy.
It's funny, you answered the second question when I asked the first. Because the second question was going to be, can you just remind us of the name of your book and other stuff? But it sounds like the answer is the new book, which I will have mentioned early on, is Lyrical Dharma, and there's an album that comes with it. And if you want more information, bornimusic.com. If you, dear listener, do not have a pen in your hand, all of that information will be in the show notes. So come back to it at your leisure.
Oh, one last thing, tying a bow on what I think what I'm always wanting to share is that, life is strange and mysterious. No, you didn't make it strange and mysterious, and you didn't make it challenging. Now, we can all make it more challenging, but it's not your fault that life is weird and difficult. And nobody really signed up for this. Nobody asked for this. We all just sort of emerged in the space, and we got to deal with it. And that's not your fault. So be nice to yourself. just cool it down. We're all going to die. So while we're here, let's just try to keep it chill, be aware, take care of your life, be kind to yourself. Yeah, that's the main thing I always want to leave people with, is just that.
A big plus one to that. I like that. It's also really helpful to just hear you say it. On the promotional tip, I do want to say one other thing that Ofosu is doing is with me. He's gonna be part of the meditation party retreat that I will be co-hosting with Sebene Selassie and Jeff Warren in October at the Omega Institute in upstate New York. You can get more information by checking out eomega.com or eomega.org, I think. Anyway, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And Ofosu is going to be there. And so come say hi.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah, I can't wait. We'll play some songs, share some thoughts about the book, and I'm happy to be a part of the retreat.
Thank you for doing this, as always.
Yeah, always. Thank you, Dan.